This is Michael Grubb from Evolved Ministry. How's everybody doing? Well, Lisette and I are doing something new, something that we're basically experimenting with, and this is going to be called True Stories. This is the first actual, I guess, volume. Would it be a volume? Installment. The first installment. It's the first
episode, the first podcast.
However you want to call it. You're welcome to believe it, disbelieve it. It's up to you. You know, that's your choice. I can say this, everything that I'm going to say is 100% true. There's no embellishment. I kind of do things straightforward as can possibly be. You might find it boring because I don't add or subtract a bunch of nonsense to it. So you can agree with it, disagree with it, believe it, not believe it. Your disbelief, though, I want to warn you, does not change history. It doesn't change what occurred. That's all I got to say about that. So, that being said, we're going to go to May 5th of 2004. Some of you may have heard this before. It's on other, vids that I've done. But let's get right into it. So, May 5th of 2004, I decide to tell my girlfriend at that time. Unfortunately, it wasn't my beautiful wife here and now, but told my girlfriend at the time I was going to be going out to meditate. I was going to take basically a night to go out, be by myself, and to meditate, because at that point I'd been with her for a while and I had invested a lot of my time in her, so I had stopped meditating as much as I had. So I blocked this off to go out and do that. Now, the place where I went to is a place called Leonard Springs. It's kind of like a nature preserve. Has tons of springs out there, natural springs. Beautiful place, lots of square footage. And at this point, it would have been springtime. As I said, it was May 5th of 2004. And I went at nighttime, so it would have been, I would say, between 11 or 11:30 when I decided to leave. So, at this particular point of time, as I said before, it's spring, so there's a lot of sounds out at night, a lot of crickets. This place is right next to a farm, so you can hear the cows. And just, when it's in springtime and it's bursting and everything is coming alive, it's just a wonderful time, okay?
Especially here, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and in Bloomington, Indiana, the reason why they call it Bloomington is it blooms. So I went down there, and how you get to Leonard Springs is when you pull up into the parking lot, you have to walk down a gravel path. And this gravel path has an area that once you cross over into it, once you hit the grass, you walk in, and this little path leads you to a flight of steps, which leads you all the way down to the first spring. So I'm walking down the gravel path. Things are happy, things sound, it's just beautiful out. And the moment I get to the area to cross over, to get to the staircase, my foot touches the grass, and the second that my foot touches the grass, it's as if a vacuum occurred. The sound completely stopped in all directions. No more crickets, no more cows mooing, no more dogs howling, nothing. Everything just went dead silent. And it was so abrupt that it definitely caused me to stop right dead in my tracks. So I'm kind of like looking around trying to figure out what just happened, and it spooked me. And so I'm kind of trying to look as deep as I can into the forest, just to see, what could have possibly have caused something like that. I'm looking deep in, and nothing has changed. Sounds are still quiet, and I'm freaked out. So next thing that happens is I'm starting to have this conversation in my head of whether I should go down there or not, and this kind of goes on for a couple of minutes, and then I just decide, I come up with the conclusion, you know what, I'll just go to the creek that's behind my house. So even though I had taken the time to drive all the way down here to Leonard Springs at that point, even though I had taken my time to do that, I basically do a 180. I turn back around, go to my car, get into the car, and I leave. Of course, all the way home, I'm sitting there thinking about that. Boy, that was weird. So I get to my house, I go inside, I get something to drink, and I leave the house, and then I decide to drive back behind my house to where the creek is. Now, when you go around this corner, as you drive back there, it's about a quarter of a mile away from my house, not far at all. When you go around the corner, there's an area that opens up, like really opens up, where you can see the farm fields all the way across. There's like 3 different farmer fields, but the way it looks, it's like all blends into one. And I look across and I see this one light that is sitting above this farmer's house. And this farmer's house, this is the one that's right next to the creek that I want to meditate to, or meditate at. And so I go ahead and I start driving towards that area. And it's a little ways. You have to go around, and you kind of go around a curve, and then it straightens out, and it goes right to his place. So I'm getting ready to go up to his place, but I stop about 200 feet in front of the house because I don't want his dogs. He has 2 big, huge Newfoundland dogs, and I don't want his dogs going off. Plus, he also has a ton of animals. There's llamas there, cows, there's pigs, all sorts of animals. And I'm not even touching the amount. But, so as I'm going around the corner, as I'm coming up to the front of the area, like I said, I stop about 200 feet in front. I'm still kind of focused on this light, looking up at this light, and it looks basically like a security light or any street lamp, but it's just a little bit higher than what you would normally think of one of those lamps being. And so I get out of my vehicle and I start walking towards it. As I'm walking towards it, I'm still staring at this light. Next thing that happens is I notice that the light moves. So this actually ends up getting kind of odd to me. I'm not hearing any sound come from this particular light, and I'm watching it steadily move towards my direction. And so basically I wait for this thing to come directly over me. Now, understand that, as I said before, that I thought this was a security light, very low. This thing is extremely low. Now, to this day, I am not for sure how I somehow missed what this thing was. Somehow I missed the size. Maybe it was because it was dark time or nighttime that I wasn't able to see the size, or maybe it was cloaked. I have no idea. But I was not able to see what was going on. But the minute that this thing got over me, I'm standing there, and it switches on a set of lights that goes right around the center of it. Just like, and this is a massive, by the way, this is where I start to notice what it is. It's a massive egg-shaped craft. I'm looking up at this thing. The lights are the most amazing colors that I've ever seen. They're extremely deep, yet at the same time just full and enriched colors. And at this point, I understand what's happening, and I kind of start to get worried. The next thing that happens is that it turns on this bottom set of lights, which goes around the entire bottom of the craft. These are triangular graded lights, but they're perfectly created so that they go all the way around the bottom and then they kind of wrap up. As this light came on, as these lights were turned on, immediately all the animals to my right started going absolutely haywire, insane. They sounded like they were being murdered. They sounded like, it literally sounded like a bunch of pigs were being stuck, or stuck pigs. And that was the most prevalent sound. That is what really sent me into a panic. It was one of the most unnerving sounds I had ever heard. And at this point, I tried, basically fight or flight kicks in. There was absolutely no fight to it. I tried to turn around and run. When I turned around to run, that's when something occurred. And I can only say something because I'm not the one that did it to myself. I lost control over my arms and my legs, and this thing pivoted me back around to the same spot that I had been staring before I had decided to try to run. And there I am looking straight up at this craft. I think my mouth was open. I think, my jaw was dropped. And at this point I'm staring up into the craft, unable to move on my own volition. And I try to tell myself to run. Now, interestingly enough, every time I tried to tell myself to run, I could hear my own voice echoing into infinity into the back of my head. So if I said run, it would go run, 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 run. And if I tried to say run again, it would do it, but it would just start overlapping over the last one. And at that point, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, whatever's happening here, they could come down and basically cut me up into a million pieces, put me back together, and there's nothing I could do about it. Absolutely nothing. And I was extremely worried. Well, at this point, animals are still going crazy. I can't move. I feel this, the only way I can call it is some sort of an interaction, which I would later describe as a download. So what ends up happening is I start feeling what I can only describe as a buzzing sensation, but it's in my temple and it's in my neck. And I can feel my nerves pulsating, but they're pulsating, it's like at the speed of sound, and it felt as if someone had took a pair of clippers that you use to shave your head with or something, and it felt like that these clippers were just resting right on my nerves. And so I can feel my neck on both sides just pulsing. I can feel my temples on both sides pulsing. And this is when all of a sudden visions start to shoot through my head. And they're shooting through my head at such a dramatic speed that I cannot keep track of one singular image that I'm seeing. I can't focus on one thing. It's moving so fast that it's just, that whole thing in of itself was intimidating. So again, I'm trying to run, can't run. Hearing the screams of the animals, can't run. Thinking to myself, what is this? What is happening to me at this point? Now, this goes on, I can only guess maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I felt like I was standing there for an eternity, but maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Then all of a sudden, I feel the release. I feel as if like I got set back in motion, as if I was animated again. And those lights on the bottom shut off. The lights in the center shut off. And then it shoots down a red laser beam into the field, and then it starts rotating from side to side as if it's surveying the field. Again, no sound. It was just this massive egg-shaped craft in the sky that is moving through the air, and it had a light on top too that was glowing according to how fast it was moving. So if it would pick up speed, okay, it would go from like a dim orange and it would get brighter orange into amber, and then it would get whiter the faster it would go. Well, at that point, when it finally released me, I was already on my way back to my car. I was running, and I jumped into the car, but I kept my eye on the craft as it was moving north. So I bolt as fast as I can around the corner, go up back around the hill, and then I head back to my house. I lose sight of it as soon as I got over the hill. The one thing that did happen was, as soon as it got over these particular trees, a bunch of white light spewed out over the top, and then that was the last I saw of it. When I got home, I ran into my house, locked the door, and went and grabbed my gun. And then I sat on the couch, just staring straight forward. And it took about 5 minutes of me just sitting there trying to understand what had occurred, to where I finally looked at the gun and realized, and I started laughing at myself, I realized that the gun was going to be of no use in that situation, because it literally had frozen me up, took control over my brain, made it so that I couldn't move, couldn't walk, run, or do anything on my own, and yet I was sitting there with a gun as if that was going to serve as some sort of form of protection. So I eventually just put the gun down, I kind of tossed it aside, and then I just sat there and waited until morning. And at that point, I told my girlfriend at the time what had happened. Now, interesting story about that is that I formerly didn't really much believe in the idea of UFOs coming to Earth. I was extremely skeptical about that. I knew that there were such thing as extraterrestrials, because the universe is too big, you know. There's obviously got to be more life, but I never thought that that anything was visiting here. And a couple of days before this event had occurred, my girlfriend at that time was watching something either on the History Channel or National Geographic. It was an abduction show, and I kept begging her to turn it, because I just thought that these people were complete losers. I thought that they were lying about everything, and I thought that you know, they were more or less just seeking attention. It's absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, there she was a believer in it, but when I told her what had happened to me, she didn't believe it. She completely took this other stance, which was really so very odd to me, because it would have to take something of a great magnitude to change the way I had thought. And I thought that if I told her something like this, she would understand it. Well, over the next year, she basically stopped talking to me, and then had conspired with my family to actually get me locked away into an institution, but that didn't work out. Now, what was interesting is over an entire year, you know, I became reclusive. I sat and would just draw. My friends kind of stopped talking to me too, because they were worried that I had gone over the deep end. And what was interesting though is a year later, it was May 12th of 2005, they all came back again. Now, what was amazing about this particular time when they came back is that I was awarded this ability to know when they were going to be there. I was awarded this ability to basically tell my friends, hey, they're going to be out there at a certain time frame. We can go out there and we'll be able to see them. So I started calling up all my friends, and even started taking a video camera out, and sure enough, every time that I said that they were going to be there, they were there. I got very lucky with that. And you know, some of that stuff is filmed and is actually on YouTube. The only thing that the only bad thing that occurred out of all that was that the military ended up catching on with that, and they started circling my house all the time, which we also got on tape. But nonetheless, that was my redemption there, because for a while it was looking really bad. But then when I was able to show my friends, when I was able to actually show my girlfriend that it was all true, that flipped things around dramatically. And so now, when I said earlier about the download, this is basically what helped start Evolve Ministry where it was at, because even though I had abilities before that, they had been completely accelerated through this experience that I had. And so I had many more experiences after that. and then I started getting trained. And I'm not going to go too far into detail about my being trained, but I will say this. That is what led me into doing what I do now, which is teaching people, not only across the United States, but around the globe, of how to connect. And so that particular download was the beginning of my basically going into hardcore training and learning this stuff as fully as I have. So anyway, that is the first true story that we're offering now, and I hope you guys like it. I hope you enjoyed it. It is what it is, and it is one of those things that really served as a development point for me. They always say that there's this point in your life where there's this one thing that will happen to you that separates your life into two parts, which is before this event and after this event. Well, after that event, that was the very crux, the creation and everything that I am doing right now. And hopefully all the people out there who are learning from Evolved Ministry, you're taking this seriously, because, you know, this whole teaching thing, none of this was my idea. This is an agenda. This is a universal agenda to get mankind to evolve. And that's about all I can say about that. Love you all. Bye-bye.